The morning rain beat against the windows of Pinnacle Tech, one of Chicago's hottest startups. Ayana Cole shook the water from her umbrella and hurried inside, her sensible shoes squeaking against the polished marble floor. She was early, as usual. The clock on the wall read 7:15 a.m., and the official workday wouldn't begin for another 45 minutes. Ayana liked this quiet time. It gave her a chance to prepare for the day without the chaos of ringing phones and demanding executives. At 25, she was younger than most of the staff, but there was a maturity in her eyes that told a different story. She hung up her coat, smoothed down her simple navy dress, and settled behind the sleek reception desk. The startup's minimalist lobby gleamed with chrome and glass, all designed to impress investors and clients alike. Ayana switched on her computer and pulled out a protein bar from her bag. Breakfast would have to be quick today. Her sister Zora had been up half the night with a fever, and Ayana had barely slept. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Zora. Feeling better. Took medicine. Don't worry. Ayana smiled. At 16, Zora was trying so hard to be grown. Since their parents' accident 3 years ago, Ayana had become her sister's guardian, putting her own dreams on hold. Ayana. Get some rest. Call if you need me. Love you. She tucked her phone away and began sorting through the mail that had arrived late Friday. This job at Pinnacle Tech wasn't her dream, but it paid the bills. Someday she'd go back to college and finish her business degree. Someday. The sound of the service elevator opening caught her attention. The cleaning staff usually finished before she arrived. Ayana looked up to see a tall man in grey coveralls pushing a cleaning cart into the lobby. He had broad shoulders and a quiet way of moving, as if trying not to take up too much space. "Morning," he said, his voice deeper than she expected. "Good morning," Ayana replied with a genuine smile. Unlike some of her co-workers, she never saw maintenance staff as invisible. "You're new, aren't you? I don't think we've met before." The man looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected a conversation. "First day, I'm filling in for Marcus. He's out with a back injury." "I'm Ayana," she said, extending her hand. After a moment's hesitation, he took it. His hand was large and warm, with calluses that suggested real work. "Landon," he said. "Well, Landon, welcome to the madhouse." She gestured around the empty lobby. "It doesn't look like much now, but give it an hour, and you'll see what I mean." He gave her a small smile that transformed his serious face. "Thanks for the warning. Coffee machine is in the break room down that hall. The one on the executive floor is fancier, but this one's decent, and they don't mind if maintenance uses it." "They?" Landon asked, raising an eyebrow. Ayana shrugged. "The higher-ups. Some of them can be a little—" She searched for a diplomatic word. "Stuck up?" he offered. She laughed. "Your words, not mine. But yes, some of them forget that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their job title." Landon studied her with interest. "And you don't think that way?" "My grandmother cleaned office buildings for 30 years, Ayana said simply. "She raised 3 kids on that salary." There's no shame in honest work. Something in his expression shifted, like she'd surprised him. "No, there isn't," he agreed quietly. The front doors opened, bringing in a gust of rain, and Bradley Pierce, the marketing director, who barely acknowledged either of them as he strode toward the elevators. Case in point, Ayana muttered once he was gone. Landon chuckled. I should get to work. Nice meeting you, Ayana. You too, Landon. If you need anything, I'm here all day. As he pushed his cart toward the hallway, Ayana couldn't help noticing that he didn't move like most janitors she'd known. There was a confidence in his posture, an awareness. But then again, who was she to judge? People were always more than their jobs. She turned back to her computer, unaware that Landon had paused to look back at her with an expression of curious interest. Landon Shaw entered the empty men's room and locked the door behind him. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, the grey coveralls, the baseball cap, the stubble he'd allowed to grow over the weekend. No one would recognize the polished CEO of Pinnacle Tech in this disguise. The idea had come to him 2 weeks ago during a board meeting. His HR director had been complaining about high turnover rates among support staff. They just don't have the right work ethic, she'd said dismissively. But Landon had suspected a different problem. He'd built Pinnacle from nothing 5 years ago. But as the company grew, something in its culture had shifted. He'd noticed how executives spoke to receptionists, how managers treated the cleaning staff, and he didn't like it, so he'd devised this undercover plan. For 2 weeks he would work as a fill-in janitor, observing how his employees behaved when they thought no one important was watching. He'd told only his assistant, Emma, who was covering for his business trip to Tokyo. He hadn't expected to have a meaningful conversation within the first 15 minutes. That receptionist, Ayana, had thrown him off balance, not just with her kindness, but with her directness. She'd looked him in the eye, spoken to him as an equal. Landon adjusted his cap and grabbed his mop. Time to see what else he could learn. By noon, Ayana's desk was swamped with deliveries, visitors, and a stream of employee requests. The rain had turned into a full-blown storm, making everyone cranky. She'd just finished calming down an irritated client when Melissa Warner, the head of HR, approached her desk. I need you to send these invitations to the board members, Melissa said, dropping a stack of envelopes on the counter. They need to go out today. I'll take care of it, Ayana assured her. And make sure you use the correct postage this time, Melissa added with a condescending smile. Last time, 3 invitations were returned. Ayana bit her tongue. The returned mail had been due to Melissa's outdated address list, not insufficient postage, but arguing would get her nowhere. Yes, Ms. Warner. As Melissa walked away, Ayana noticed Landon mopping nearby. He caught her eye and raised an eyebrow, clearly having overheard the exchange. Ayana shook her head slightly as if to say, Don't worry about it. The day dragged on. At 5 o'clock, most employees began filing out, complaining about the continuing downpour. Ayana stayed at her desk, finishing up the day's reports. She usually worked until 6, partly because she was thorough and partly because the extra hour of overtime helped with the bills. At 5:45, her phone rang. It was Zora. Hey, you feeling better? Ayana asked, cradling the phone between her shoulder and ear as she typed. Yeah, but we have a problem, Zora said, her voice tight. The ceiling in the bathroom is leaking again. There's water coming through the light fixture. Ayana closed her eyes. Their landlord had promised to fix the roof last month. Turn off the breaker for the bathroom and put a bucket under it. I'll call Mr. Jenkins on my way home. I already tried. He's not answering. Of course he's not, Ayana muttered. Okay, I'm leaving now. Don't use the bathroom until I get there. She hung up and quickly gathered her things, frustration building in her chest. One more expense they couldn't afford. Everything okay? Ayana looked up to see Landon standing nearby with his mop. Just some trouble at home. Leaky roof. She tried to smile. The joys of renting from a landlord who thinks duct tape fixes everything. Landon frowned. That sounds dangerous, especially if it's near electrical fixtures. Tell me about it. My sister's there alone, and She stopped herself. Why was she sharing personal problems with someone she'd just met? Sorry, not your problem. I used to do some handyman work, Landon said. If you need help figuring out a temporary fix. Ayana was touched by the offer. That's really kind, but I'll manage. It's not the first time we've dealt with this. The offer stands. Sometimes an extra pair of hands makes a difference. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Ayana felt a strange connection to this quiet man in coveralls. There was something in his gaze that seemed to truly see her. Thank you, she said softly. I'll keep that in mind. The moment was broken by the ping of the elevator. Emma Chen, the CEO's executive assistant, stepped out, looking surprised to see Ayana still there. Working late again? Emma asked. Just finishing up, Ayana replied, grabbing her umbrella. But I need to head out now. Family emergency. Emma nodded sympathetically. Hope everything's okay. Oh, by the way, did you hear anything from Mr. Shaw's office in Tokyo today? I've been trying to reach him. Ayana shook her head. No calls from Tokyo, but I've been so busy I might have missed something. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Landon turn away, suddenly very interested in mopping the same spot of floor. No problem, Emma said. If he calls tomorrow, just put him through to me right away. Will do. Have a good night. As Ayana hurried toward the exit, she glanced back at Landon, who gave her a small wave. Despite her worry about the apartment, she found herself smiling as she stepped into the rainy night. The next morning broke clear and sunny. Ayana arrived at work with dark circles under her eyes. The leak had gotten worse, and she and Zora had spent half the night emptying buckets and trying to protect their few possessions from water damage. She was surprised to find a coffee cup waiting on her desk, still hot, with a note. Rough night? This might help. Telista Ayana looked around but didn't see Landon anywhere. The gesture warmed her more than the coffee itself. She took a sip, black with just a hint of sugar, exactly how she liked it. How had he known? At 7:30, Landon appeared, pushing his cart out of the service elevator. Thank you for the coffee, Ayana called to him. He smiled, seeming pleased that she'd figured out it was from him. No problem. How's the roof situation? Not great. My landlord finally answered and promised to send someone soon, whatever that means. Landon frowned. That's not right. There are tenant laws that protect you. In theory, sure, Ayana sighed. But fighting with him takes time and energy I don't have right now. You've got a lot on your shoulders, Landon observed. Something about his tone made Ayana look at him more closely. There was no pity in his eyes, just understanding. "We all have our burdens," she said. "What about you? Any leaky roofs in your life?" He seemed startled by her question, as if he wasn't used to people asking about his problems. "Nothing as immediate as yours, but yes, I have my share of complications." Before Ayana could respond, her phone rang. It was the front desk security announcing the arrival of the first visitors of the day. The quiet morning was over. "Duty calls," she said with a rueful smile. "Thanks again for the coffee." Landon nodded and pushed his cart away, but not before giving her another one of those looks that seemed to see straight through her professional facade. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Ayana would arrive early, and Landon would be there, usually with coffee for both of them. They'd talk for 15 or 20 minutes before the workday officially began. She learned that he was well-read and had opinions on everything from politics to the best pizza in Chicago. He never talked much about his personal life, deflecting questions with vague answers, but he listened to her stories about Zora with genuine interest. On Thursday morning, Ayana arrived to find not just coffee on her desk, but a small paper bag containing a still-warm blueberry muffin. "You mentioned yesterday that they're your favorite," Landon said when he appeared a few minutes later. "You didn't have to do that," Ayana said, touched by his thoughtfulness. He shrugged. "I was passing by the bakery anyway." As they sipped their coffee, Ayana found herself telling him about her dreams of going back to school, of opening her own business someday. "What kind of business?" Landon asked. "A community center with business resources for underprivileged neighborhoods," she said, "where people can get help with resumes, interview skills, financial literacy, all the things nobody taught me growing up." Landon's eyes lit up. "That's actually a brilliant idea." "Thanks, but it's just a dream for now. First, I need to get Zora through high school and into college. My degree will have to wait." "Why not do both?" Ayana laughed. "Have you seen tuition prices lately? Not to mention rent, food, and everything else. I'm barely keeping our heads above water as it is." Landon frowned, looking troubled. "There must be scholarships, grants. I've looked into all of that, but even with financial aid, the numbers don't add up." She shook her head. "Anyway, enough about my problems. Tell me something about you, something real, not just your coffee preference." Now it was Landon's turn to look uncomfortable. "There's not much to tell." "Come on," Ayana pressed gently. "You know all about my leaky apartment and my sister's science project drama. Fair is fair." Landon was quiet for a moment. "I grew up with money," he finally said, "but it wasn't happy. Rich, but miserable. That's a cliché," Ayana teased. He smiled slightly. "Sometimes clichés exist for a reason. My father was successful but cold. He cared more about his company's stock price than his family. I promised myself I'd never be like that, but..." He trailed off. "But what?" "Sometimes I wonder if I'm more like him than I want to admit." The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't casual morning chit-chat anymore. "Well, the fact that you're worried about it probably means you're not," Ayana said softly. The truly cold people don't spend time questioning themselves. Landon looked at her with something like wonder. That's a good point. The front doors opened, bringing in the first wave of employees, and their moment of connection was broken. I should get back to work, Landon said, rising from where he'd been perched on the edge of her desk. See you tomorrow? Ayana asked. Actually, tomorrow I'll be on the executive floor. Special cleaning project. Oh. She tried not to show her disappointment. Well, good luck up there with the big shots. Thanks. He hesitated, then added, I've enjoyed our talks, Ayana. Me too, she admitted, surprised by how much she meant it. As he walked away, Ayana wondered why the thought of not seeing him tomorrow left her feeling so unexpectedly sad. In the executive bathroom on the top floor, Landon changed out of his coveralls and into the suit Emma had brought him. After nearly a week of his undercover work, he needed to make a brief appearance as CEO to sign some urgent documents. As he knotted his tie, he thought about Ayana. He'd started this experiment to observe his company's culture, but he hadn't expected to form a connection with anyone. Her kindness, her strength, her humor, they'd drawn him in more than he'd anticipated. And now he felt trapped by his own deception. Every morning, he looked forward to their conversations. She was the only person in weeks who'd spoken to him as just a man, not as Landon Shaw, CEO and millionaire. What would she think if she knew the truth? The thought made his stomach tighten. Emma knocked on the door. The board members are waiting, Landon. Coming, he called, taking one last look at his reflection, now every inch the polished executive. He stepped out, straightening his jacket. Remember, as far as anyone knows, I'm still in Tokyo. I was never here today. Emma nodded. Your secret's safe. But Landon, how much longer are you planning to keep this up? People are going to start asking questions. Just another week, he said. I'm learning too much to stop now. What he didn't say was that the most valuable thing he'd learned had nothing to do with his company, and everything to do with the woman at the front desk who saw people for who they were, not what they owned. As he walked toward the boardroom, Landon wondered how it would feel to hear Ayana call him Mr. Shaw instead of just Landon. The thought left him cold. Friday morning came with a strange emptiness for Ayana. She found herself glancing at the service elevator every few minutes, even though Landon had told her he'd be working on the executive floor today. Her desk felt oddly quiet without their morning conversation. The coffee she'd picked up on her way to work didn't taste as good as the ones he'd brought her. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself. You've known the man for less than a week. Yet there was something about Landon that had connected with her instantly. Maybe it was the way he listened, really listened when she spoke, or how he seemed to see the person behind her professional smile. At 10:30, her phone rang. Pinnacle Tech, how may I direct your call? She answered automatically. Ayana, it's Zora. I'm at school, but Mrs. Peterson called. Our apartment... Her sister's voice broke. Ayana's heart sank. What happened? The ceiling collapsed in the bathroom. There's water everywhere. Mrs. Peterson says we need to get our stuff out before it's ruined. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Ayana said, already gathering her purse. "Call Mr. Jenkins and tell him what happened." She hung up and quickly called Melissa Warner to explain the emergency. "You can't just leave in the middle of the day," Melissa said irritably. "We have the investor meeting this afternoon." "My ceiling collapsed," Ayana repeated, trying to stay calm. "My sister and I might not have a place to sleep tonight." Melissa sighed dramatically. "Fine, but I expect you back by 2. The meeting is at 3 and we need the lobby looking perfect." "I'll do my best," Ayana promised, knowing it might be impossible. As she hurried toward the elevator, she nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. Strong hands steadied her, and she looked up to find Landon, still in his coveralls but with a toolbox instead of his usual mop. "Whoa, where's the fire?" he asked with a smile that faded when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" "My ceiling collapsed. The bathroom one that was leaking. I need to get home and salvage what I can." Landon's expression turned serious. "Do you have a car?" "No, I was going to call a rideshare." "I have a truck," he said. "I can drive you and help move things." Ayana hesitated. She barely knew him, but something in her gut told her she could trust him. And right now, she needed all the help she could get. "Are you sure? What about your job here?" "I'll take care of it," he said with a confidence that struck her as unusual for a fill-in janitor. "Meet me at the service entrance in 5 minutes." Before she could thank him, he was gone, pulling out a cell phone as he walked away. Landon ducked into an empty conference room and quickly dialed Emma. "I need you to cover for me," he said when she answered. "And I need my truck brought to the service entrance. Now." "What? Why?" Emma sounded confused. "Emergency situation. I'm helping someone." "Landon, you have a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. The real Tokyo." "Reschedule it," he said firmly. Emma sighed. "This is about that receptionist, isn't it? The one you keep talking about. Her ceiling collapsed, Emma. She needs help. You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, not a handyman." "Today I'm both," he said. "Just get me the truck." He hung up before she could argue further. What he was doing was impulsive and probably unwise. His charade as a janitor was meant to be an observation exercise, not a way to insert himself into an employee's personal life. But the thought of Ayana facing this crisis alone bothered him more than it should. 5 minutes later, he met her at the service entrance, where his truck, a practical Ford F-150, not the kind of luxury vehicle most would expect a wealthy man to drive, was waiting, keys in the ignition. "Your truck was here?" Ayana asked, surprised. "I keep it parked nearby for work," Landon improvised. "Hop in." The drive to Ayana's apartment was quick. She lived in a modest building in a neighborhood that had seen better days. As they parked, Landon could see water trickling down the exterior wall near what he assumed was her bathroom. Zora was waiting outside, a tall, lanky teenager with the same determined set to her jaw as her sister. She raised an eyebrow when Ayana introduced Landon. "You brought your work friend?" she asked with a meaningful look at her sister. "He offered to help," Ayana said, a warning in her tone. "And we need it." Inside, the situation was worse than Landon had expected. The bathroom ceiling had completely given way, soaking the floor and seeping into the bedroom next door. The air smelled of mildew and wet plaster. Mr. Jenkins, a heavy-set man with a permanent scowl, was arguing with another tenant in the hallway. "It's not just their apartment," the neighbor was saying. "The water is coming through my ceiling now, too." "I've got a guy coming," Mr. Jenkins insisted. "But it might not be till tomorrow." Ayana approached him. "Tomorrow, Mr. Jenkins, our things are being destroyed right now." The landlord turned to her with barely concealed annoyance. "What do you want me to do, Cole? Make the rain from yesterday magically disappear? I've got 6 units with leaks. You've had months to fix the roof," Ayana said, her voice tight. "This isn't a surprise storm problem. This is negligence." Mr. Jenkins' face darkened. "Watch yourself." "There's plenty of people who'd take your apartment in a heartbeat, leak or no leak." Landon stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "That sounds like a threat." "Who are you?" Jenkins demanded. "Someone who knows that threatening tenants and ignoring habitability issues can result in serious legal consequences," Landon said calmly, "including fines that would cost a lot more than fixing the roof would have." Jenkins looked Landon up and down, taking in the coveralls. "You a lawyer or something?" "I know enough," Landon said. "Enough to suggest that you find emergency accommodation for Ms. Cole and her sister while you make immediate repairs. Unless you'd prefer to discuss this with the housing authority." Something in Landon's tone, the natural authority he couldn't completely disguise, made Jenkins back down. "I'll see what I can do," he muttered. "Maybe the Hollisters' old unit on the first floor. They moved out last week. It ain't pretty, but it's dry." "We'll take it," Ayana said quickly, "but we'll need help moving our things." "I ain't got nobody to spare," Jenkins said. "I'll help," Landon offered. Jenkins shrugged. "Whatever, I'll get the keys." As he walked away, Ayana turned to Landon with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "That was impressive. You sure know how to talk to landlords." Landon gave a self-deprecating smile. "I've dealt with difficult people before." For the next few hours, they worked to salvage what they could from the apartment. Zora focused on packing clothes and school supplies, while Ayana and Landon moved furniture and electronics away from the spreading water. The apartment on the first floor was smaller and shabbier than their original unit, but as promised, it was dry. By 1 o'clock, they had moved the essentials down. "I can't thank you enough," Ayana said as they carried in the last box. "I don't know what we would have done without your help." "It's nothing," Landon said, though they both knew it wasn't true. He'd spent his morning hauling furniture and arguing with a slumlord instead of running his company. Zora, who had been watching Landon with suspicious curiosity all morning, finally spoke up. "So you work with my sister?" "In the same building," Landon clarified. "I'm filling in for the regular maintenance guy." "And you just happen to have a truck and time to help," Zora pressed. "Zora," Ayana warned. "It's okay," Landon said. "Yes, I had a truck and time. Sometimes things work out that way." Zora didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. "I'm going to start unpacking in the bedroom." When she was gone, Ayana sighed. Sorry about that. She's protective. She should be, Landon said. You two have been through a lot together. Ayana nodded, then checked her watch with a groan. It's almost 1:30. I promised I'd be back by 2, but there's still so much to do here. Call in, Landon suggested. Explain the situation. I can't. There's an investor meeting at 3, and Melissa made it clear she expects me there. Ayana looked around the half-unpacked apartment with despair. But I can't leave Zora to deal with all this alone either. Landon made a quick decision. Go to work. I'll stay and help Zora finish unpacking. Ayana stared at him. What? No, I couldn't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. He smiled. Besides, I've already called in to work and said I'd be out all day, might as well make myself useful. But you barely know us. I know enough, he said simply. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A connection that went beyond their brief acquaintance. For a moment, Ayana thought he might step closer, might touch her face or take her hand. The air seemed charged with possibility. Instead, Landon cleared his throat and stepped back. You should get going if you want to make it by 2. Ayana nodded, suddenly flustered. Right, yes, I'll just let Zora know the plan. As she went to speak with her sister, Landon pulled out his phone and quickly texted Emma. I won't be back today. Handle anything urgent and tell maintenance I'm out sick. Emma's reply was immediate. This is getting complicated, Landon. The board is asking questions. He knew she was right, but right now, he couldn't bring himself to care. When Ayana returned to work, the lobby was buzzing with excitement about the investor meeting. She quickly freshened up in the restroom, doing her best to look presentable despite the morning she'd had. Melissa appeared as Ayana settled back at her desk. You made it. Good. The investors will be arriving soon. Mr. Shaw himself is calling in for this meeting, so everything needs to be perfect. Mr. Shaw? Ayana repeated. The CEO was almost mythical to most employees. He was rarely seen in the office, traveling constantly for business. Yes, he's video conferencing in from Tokyo. Make sure the calls are held while the meeting is in progress. No interruptions. As Melissa walked away, Ayana's phone buzzed with a text from Zora. Your janitor friend is actually pretty cool. He fixed our shower too. Ayana smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. Then another text came through. Also, he's cute. Just saying. Ayana rolled her eyes, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when she thought about Landon. There was something about him, a depth, an intelligence that seemed at odds with his job. But then again, people were always more than their job titles. At 2:45, the investors began to arrive, men and women in expensive suits with calculating eyes. Ayana directed them to the conference room, putting on her most professional smile despite her exhaustion. At exactly 3 o'clock, the executive team gathered in the conference room. Through the glass walls, Ayana could see them setting up the video call. A large screen at the end of the table flickered to life. Curious, she found herself watching, wondering what the elusive CEO looked like. The screen was angled away from her, but she could see the reactions of those in the room, the respectful nods, the eager smiles. Her phone rang, pulling her attention away. It was the building's security desk. Miss Cole, there's a delivery for you, the guard said. For me personally, that was unusual. Yes, ma'am. Flowers. Confused, Ayana went to the lobby to find a small but elegant arrangement of wildflowers. Not the typical roses or lilies, but colorful meadow blossoms that reminded her of the fields near her grandmother's house. The card read simply, "Hope things are settling down. Zora's all unpacked." Layana felt her cheeks warm as she carried the flowers back to her desk. How had he known she preferred wildflowers to fancy bouquets? She'd never mentioned it. The afternoon passed in a blur of phone calls and visitor check-ins. At 6, as she was preparing to leave, Emma Chen approached her desk. "Long day?" the executive assistant asked. "You have no idea," Ayana sighed. "How was the investor meeting?" "Successful," Emma said with a small smile. "Mr. Shaw has a way of winning people over." "I've never actually seen him," Ayana admitted. "What's he like?" Emma seemed to consider the question carefully. "He's not what most people expect. Behind the business persona, he's actually quite down to earth. Cares about people more than most realize." "That's rare in executives," Ayana said, thinking of Melissa and her ilk. "Rarer than it should be," Emma agreed. She glanced at the flowers. "Those are pretty. Special occasion?" "No, just a friend," Ayana said, not wanting to explain about Landon and the apartment crisis. Emma studied her for a moment. "You know, Mr. Shaw is planning to be in the office next week. In person, not just via video. There's going to be an all-staff meeting on Wednesday." "Oh? What's it about?" "Changes to company culture, from what I understand." Emma's expression was unreadable. "I think it's going to be quite revealing." Something about her tone made Ayana curious, but before she could ask more questions, Emma's phone buzzed. "I need to take this," she said, already walking away. "Have a good weekend, Ayana." "You too," Ayana called after her, puzzled by the strange conversation. The weekend passed in a whirlwind of unpacking and settling into the new apartment. To Ayana's surprise, Landon texted on Saturday to check how they were doing. She found herself smiling at her phone like a teenager. Zora noticed. "Is that Janitor Landon?" she teased. "Stop calling him that," Ayana said. "And yes, he's just checking in." "Mm-hmm," Zora grinned. "You know, he spent like an hour fixing things around here after you left. The shower, the sticky cabinet, that loose electrical outlet. He's either really into home repair or really into you." "He was just being nice," Ayana insisted, but the thought made her heart beat faster. On Sunday evening, Landon texted again. "See you tomorrow morning." "I'll bring coffee," Ayana replied. "Definitely. I've missed our talks." As soon as she sent it, she wished she could take it back. Too forward, too honest. But his response came quickly. "Me too. More than I expected to." She fell asleep with those words echoing in her mind, a smile on her face, despite the chaos of the past few days. Monday morning, Ayana arrived at work with an extra spring in her step. She'd taken special care with her appearance, a touch of mascara, her favorite navy dress, the small gold earrings that had been her mother's. But 7:15 came and went with no sign of Landon. By 7:30, she was checking her phone every few minutes, wondering if he'd been delayed. At 7:45, her phone buzzed with a text. "Can't make it this morning. Something came up. See you tomorrow." Disappointment washed over her, stronger than it should have been. She was getting in too deep. caring too much about a man she barely knew. The day dragged by. At lunch, Ayana overheard two executives talking excitedly about tomorrow's all-staff meeting. "Shaw's actually going to be there in person," one said. "First time in what, 6 months? Longer," the other replied. "Word is he's planning some major announcements, organizational changes." Ayana thought about Emma's cryptic comments about the meeting being revealing. Was there restructuring coming? Layoffs? The thought made her stomach clench. She couldn't afford to lose this job, especially now with the apartment situation. That evening, as she was preparing to leave, her phone buzzed with another text from Landon. "Sorry about this morning. Had some important matters to handle. Can we talk tomorrow before work? There's something I need to tell you." Ayana stared at the message, a sense of unease growing in her chest. The formal tone, the serious request. It felt like the prelude to bad news. "Sure. Same time?" she replied. "Yes, and Ayana. Thank you for being someone I could just be myself with." The message left her with more questions than answers. Why did it sound like he was saying goodbye? Tuesday morning, Ayana arrived early, her stomach in knots. But once again, there was no sign of Landon at their usual meeting time. Instead, the lobby was bustling with unusual activity. Maintenance staff were polishing every surface, and security guards in formal uniforms were stationed at the entrance. "What's going on?" Ayana asked one of the regular janitors. "Big meeting today," he replied. "The CEO's coming in person. They want everything looking perfect." At 8:30, Melissa appeared at Ayana's desk. "The all-staff meeting has been moved up to 9:01. Mr. Shaw arrived early. You'll need to come too. Everyone is required to attend." "But who will cover the front desk?" Ayana asked. "Security will handle it for the hour." "This is mandatory, Ayana." As Melissa walked away, Ayana checked her phone one more time. No messages from Landon. Where was he? At 8:55, employees began filing into the large conference center on the ground floor. Ayana took a seat near the back, still scanning the crowd for any sign of Landon. Maybe he'd be there with the other maintenance staff. The room fell silent as Emma Chen walked to the podium at the front. "Good morning, everyone," she said with a professional smile. "Thank you for adjusting your schedules for this important meeting." As you know, Pinnacle Tech has grown tremendously over the past few years. Today, our CEO wants to discuss some observations and changes regarding our company culture. She turned toward the side entrance. "Please welcome Mr. Landon Shaw." The door opened, and Ayana's world tilted on its axis. There, walking confidently to the podium in a perfectly tailored suit, was Landon, her Landon, the man she'd been sharing coffee and conversations with for the past week. The man who had helped her move furniture and fixed her shower, the man she was falling for. Only he wasn't a fill-in janitor at all. He was Landon Shaw, CEO of Pinnacle Tech. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Landon faltered mid-step, the confident mask slipping for just a moment. In that instant of raw recognition, Ayana felt her heart crack open with betrayal. She had been a fool, a complete and utter fool. Without thinking, she stood up and walked out of the room, ignoring the curious stares and Melissa's hissed command to sit down. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't bear to hear whatever lies or explanations he was about to offer. The man in coveralls had never existed, and the connection she'd felt, the trust she'd given so freely, it had all been built on deception. Ayana burst through the lobby doors, her vision blurred with unshed tears. She needed air, needed space, needed to be anywhere but in that room with him. The morning sun was harsh and bright as she stumbled onto the sidewalk. Her mind was a whirlwind of contradicting emotions: anger, humiliation, confusion. Every conversation with Landon replayed in her head, now tainted with the knowledge that it had all been a lie. "Ayana, wait!" She heard his voice behind her but didn't stop. Couldn't stop. If she turned around and faced him now, she might fall apart completely. "Please," he called closer now. "Let me explain." Ayana whirled around, finding Landon, no Mr. Shaw, standing a few feet away, his expensive suit a stark reminder of the gulf between them. "Explain what?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "How you pretended to be someone you're not. How you let me talk about my problems, my dreams, my life while hiding who you really are." "It wasn't like that," he insisted, taking a step toward her. She backed away. What was it like then? A social experiment? Let's see how the little people live? Or maybe it was just entertainment, the CEO playing janitor for kicks? No. The pain in his eyes looked genuine, but how could she trust anything about him now? "I was trying to understand the company culture. I wanted to see how people behaved when they didn't know I was watching." "So it was a test," Ayana said flatly. "And what was I, your most interesting subject?" Landon ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd seen him make when he was stressed, when she thought he was just Landon the janitor with normal worries, not the millionaire CEO with a secret agenda. "You were unexpected," he admitted quietly. "I never planned to get involved." "Involved," she repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. "Is that what we were?" "Ayana, please." "Can we go somewhere and talk? Not as boss and employee, just as people." She laughed, a hollow sound. "But we are boss and employee, Mr. Shaw. That's the reality you kept from me. And now I need to go back in there and face everyone who just watched me walk out on the CEO's big moment. Everyone who's going to be whispering about why." The realization of how this would affect her at work hit her like a physical blow. The stares, the gossip, the speculation about what was between her and the boss. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. "I'll come with you," Landon offered. "I can explain to everyone." "No!" The thought was horrifying. "The last thing I need is you singling me out even more. Just leave me alone." She turned and walked back toward the building, her head high despite the storm raging inside her. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Behind her, she heard Landon say softly, "I never meant to hurt you." But intentions didn't matter now. The damage was done. Inside, the all-staff meeting had apparently ended early. Employees were filtering back to their desks, buzzing with excited conversation. They fell silent when Ayana entered, their curious gazes following her as she made her way to the reception desk. Emma was waiting for her, a sympathetic look on her face. "You knew," Ayana said. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded. "I'm his executive assistant, I had to know. And you didn't think to warn me? To give me some hint that I was pouring my heart out to the CEO of the company?" "It wasn't my secret to tell," Emma said gently. "For what it's worth, I've never seen him as affected by anyone as he was by you. Every day all he talked about was your conversations." The thought of Landon discussing her with Emma made Ayana's stomach clench. Had they laughed about her problems? Her naivete? "I need to work," Ayana said curtly, sitting down at her desk. Emma hesitated. "Mr. Shaw has cancelled his meetings for the day. He said to tell you he'll be in his office if you want to talk." "I don't." "Ayana." "Please, Emma, I can't do this right now." With a small nod, Emma walked away, leaving Ayana to face the curious stares and whispered conversations alone. The day crawled by in excruciating slowness. Melissa Warner made a point of stopping by Ayana's desk around noon. "That was quite a scene you caused this morning," she said with false concern. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," Ayana said tightly. "Just wasn't feeling well." Melissa's eyes gleamed with malicious curiosity. "It seemed like Mr. Shaw recognized you. Do you two know each other outside of work?" "No," Ayana said, the lie sticking in her throat. "I was just surprised to see that the new janitor was actually the CEO." "It was unexpected." "Yes, his little undercover project," Melissa said with a dismissive wave. "A waste of time, if you ask me. As if the CEO needs to worry about how the cleaning staff is treated." Ayana bit her tongue, remembering how Melissa had barely acknowledged Landon when she thought he was just maintenance. "Well, if you're feeling better, we have the monthly department reports to collate," Melissa said. "I need them by 4. It was busy work, meant to remind Ayana of her place. Normally it would have irritated her, but today she welcomed the distraction. At 3 o'clock her phone buzzed with a text from Zora. "Your janitor friend is all over social media. Did you know he's like a millionaire CEO or something?" Ayana sighed. Of course it would be on social media already. The story was too juicy. CEO goes undercover as janitor in his own company. She texted back, "We'll talk when I get home." A moment later, her desk phone rang. The display showed a number she didn't recognize. "Pinnacle Tech, how may I direct your call?" she answered professionally. "Ms. Cole, this is Sandra from the Chicago Tribune," said a crisp female voice. "I'm hoping to ask you a few questions about Landon Shaw's undercover stint at Pinnacle Tech. Sources tell us you had a particularly close relationship with him during this time." Ayana's blood ran cold. "I have no comment. Please don't call this number again." She hung up, her hands shaking. This was spiraling out of control. How had the press gotten her name already? And who had told them about her and Landon? Her phone buzzed with another text, this time from Landon. "I'm so sorry about the reporters. I'm handling it. Please don't talk to any of them." She didn't reply. By 5 o'clock, Ayana was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. As she gathered her things to leave, Emma appeared at her desk once more. "Mister." Shaw asked me to give you this, she said, handing Ayana an envelope. And for what it's worth, I think you should hear him out. He's not the person you think he is right now. Isn't he? Ayana took the envelope but didn't open it. The problem is, I don't know who he is at all. In the privacy of a bathroom stall on the first floor, far from the executive offices, Ayana finally opened Landon's envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Ayana, there's no excuse for what I did. I deceived you, and I betrayed the trust you gave so freely. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I haven't earned that. What I am asking for is a chance to explain, not as your boss, but as the man who brought you coffee in the mornings. The man who fixed your shower and moved your furniture. The man who saw the real you and wanted you to see the real him too. I'll be at Porter Park at 7 tonight by the fountain where we talked about that day. If you come, I promise to answer any question you ask with complete honesty. If you don't, I'll understand and I won't bother you again at work. Either way, your job is secure. I've instructed HR to process a significant raise for you, effective immediately. This isn't a bribe or an attempt to buy your forgiveness. It's simply what you should have been paid all along. Landon Ayana read the letter twice, her emotions in turmoil. Part of her wanted to rip it up and forget Landon Shaw ever existed, but another part, the part that remembered the warmth in his eyes when they talked, the gentleness in his hands when he helped her move, that part wanted answers. The fountain he mentioned was where they'd sat one morning last week, when he'd brought her coffee and a blueberry muffin. They'd talked about childhood dreams, and she'd mentioned always wanting to visit Paris. He'd said the Trocadero fountain reminded him of one in a park near his office. It had seemed like such a small, unimportant conversation at the time. The fact that he remembered it now made her heart ache. I shouldn't go, she muttered to herself as she left the building, carefully avoiding the small group of reporters who had gathered near the entrance. But even as she told herself to go straight home, her feet carried her toward Porter Park. The evening was cool with the first hints of autumn in the air. The fountain sparkled in the fading sunlight, water cascading over stone tiers in a soothing rhythm. Landon was already there, sitting on a bench, staring at the water. He'd changed from his business suit into jeans and a simple blue sweater, an outfit much closer to what the janitor Landon might have worn. He looked up as she approached, hope and apprehension warring in his expression. "You came," he said, standing. "I almost didn't," Ayana admitted, staying a careful distance away. "I would have understood." He gestured to the bench. "Will you sit?" She hesitated, then sat on the far end, leaving plenty of space between them. "You said you'd answer any question honestly," she began. "I will." "Why?" The single word contained all her hurt, all her confusion. "Why the deception? Why not just talk to your employees normally?" Landon took a deep breath. "6 months ago, I started noticing changes in the company culture. Higher turnover rates, lower satisfaction scores. When I asked the executive team about it, they all said the same thing, that people were just being entitled, wanting too much." "But you didn't believe that," Ayana guessed. "No. I built Pinnacle from nothing 5 years ago. In the beginning, we were like a family. Everyone knew each other, respected each other. But as we grew, things changed, she finished for him. Yes. He looked at her, his eyes troubled. I thought about bringing in consultants or doing formal interviews, but I knew people would just tell me what they thought I wanted to hear. I needed to see the truth. So, you became a janitor. A position that's invisible to most people, he agreed. I wanted to see how employees behaved when they thought no one important was watching, who was kind without an agenda, who treated people with respect regardless of their job title. And what did you find? Ayana asked quietly. I found that most of the executives couldn't be bothered to learn the maintenance staff's names, that Melissa Warner talks down to everyone she considers beneath her, that Bradley Pierce takes credit for his team's ideas while blaming them for his mistakes. He paused. And I found you. The way he said it, with wonder, with warmth, made her heart flutter despite her resolve to stay angry. What about me? She asked, not sure she wanted to hear the answer. You were the only person who saw me as a human being from the first moment. You offered me coffee, remembered my name, treated me with respect. You talked to me about real things. Your sister, your dreams, your struggles. You were authentic. I was honest, she corrected him. Something you weren't. Landon flinched. You're right. I wasn't honest about my identity or my job. But everything else, everything I shared about myself, my thoughts, my feelings, that was all real, Ayana. I've never been more myself than when I was with you. She wanted to believe him. God help her, she did. But the wound was still too fresh. Do you know what today was like for me? She asked. The stares, the whispers, the reporters calling. Everyone thinks I'm either sleeping with the boss or being manipulated by him. My reputation, my professionalism, it's all compromised now. Landon's face fell. I didn't think about how it would affect you. That was selfish, and I'm sorry. What did you think would happen? That we'd have this grand reveal, and everyone would applaud? I didn't think beyond finding out the truth about my company, he admitted. And then when I met you, I didn't think beyond wanting to spend time with you. I kept telling myself I'd explain tomorrow or the next day. But the longer it went on, the harder it got, she finished, understanding despite herself. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the fountain's spray catch the last golden rays of sunlight. What happens now? Ayana finally asked. That depends on you, Landon said quietly. Professionally, nothing changes. Your job is secure with the raise I mentioned. You've earned it and more. And personally? He looked at her, vulnerability naked in his eyes. Personally, I'm asking for a second chance. Not as your boss, not as the janitor, but just as me. The real me, no more lies. The sincerity in his voice was hard to doubt, but trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. I don't know if I can, Ayana said honestly. Every time I look at you, I'll remember how foolish I felt today, how humiliated. I understand, he said, the pain in his voice genuine, but if you ever change your mind, I'll be waiting. He stood, respecting her need for space. For what it's worth, Ayana, meeting you was the best thing that happened to me in years. I'm just sorry I ruined it." As he walked away, Ayana felt tears sting her eyes. Part of her wanted to call him back, to give him the second chance he asked for, but the larger part, the wounded part, kept her silent. She sat by the fountain until long after he was gone, trying to reconcile the Landon she'd grown to care for with the CEO who had deceived her. The next morning, Ayana called in sick. She couldn't face the office, the stairs, the questions. Not yet. Zora, who had already heard the whole story the night before, was surprisingly sympathetic. "So he pretended to be a janitor to see how people really acted," she summarized, as they sat at their small kitchen table. "That's actually kind of smart." "It was deceitful," Ayana insisted. "Sure, but his heart was in the right place," Zora argued. "He wanted to know who was genuine, and he found you. He lied to me." "About his job, yeah, but from what you've told me, he was honest about everything else." Zora gave her sister a knowing look. "And you liked him, the real him, not his bank account." Ayana couldn't deny it. She had liked Landon, his thoughtfulness, his humor, the way he listened when she spoke. Those qualities couldn't have been completely fake. "It's complicated," she sighed. "It always is," Zora agreed, with the wisdom of a teenager who had watched too many romance movies. "But if he's really the same person underneath all that money and power, maybe he deserves another shot." Before Ayana could respond, her phone rang. It was Emma. "I know you called in sick," Emma said when Ayana answered, "but I thought you should know what's happening here." "What is it?" Ayana asked, immediately concerned. "Landon, Mr. Shaw, called an emergency board meeting this morning. He announced a complete reorganization of the executive team." "Melissa Warner has been demoted, and several others have been put on probation pending review of their management practices." Ayana was stunned. Because of what he saw while undercover? Exactly. He presented evidence of systematic mistreatment of support staff, discriminatory practices, and mismanagement. He's implementing a new company-wide respect policy with real consequences for violations. "Wow," Ayana breathed. So he had been serious about changing the company culture. "There's more," Emma continued. "He's creating a new community outreach division, focused on business education for underprivileged neighborhoods. The exact program you told him about." Ayana's heart skipped a beat. He'd not only listened to her dream, but was making it a reality. "He's looking for someone to head it up," Emma added. "Someone with vision and heart. Someone who understands what it's like to need those resources." The implication was clear, but Ayana wasn't ready to think about that yet. "Why are you telling me all this, Emma?" There was a pause on the other end. "Because I've worked with Landon for 5 years, and I've never seen him fight this hard for anything. Not the company, not deals worth millions, nothing. Until now." After they hung up, Ayana sat in silence, processing everything Emma had told her. Landon was actually implementing changes based on what he'd learned, including her ideas about community business education. "See?" Zora said, having overheard the conversation. "Actions speak louder than words." Ayana nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. She was remembering all the small moments with Landon, the coffee he brought each morning, the way he'd dropped everything to help when her ceiling collapsed, the careful attention he paid when she talked about her dreams. Had it all been an act? Her heart said no, but was that enough to overcome the betrayal? The next day, Ayana returned to work, braced for awkwardness. To her surprise, the office atmosphere had changed dramatically. The usual hierarchical tension was gone, replaced by a tentative camaraderie. When she reached her desk, she found a memo outlining the new company policies, emphasizing respect for all employees regardless of position. There was also a notice about the new community outreach division, inviting applications for various roles. Melissa Warner walked by, noticeably subdued. She gave Ayana a tight smile and continued on without her usual condescending remarks. Around 11, Emma approached Ayana's desk. "Mr. Shaw would like to see you in his office when you have a moment." Ayana's stomach tightened. "Is it about the sick day? Because I really wasn't feeling well." "It's not about that," Emma assured her. "And it's not a command. He said when she has a moment, not immediately. Take your time." Ayana nodded, grateful for the consideration. She spent the morning catching up on work, deliberately avoiding thinking about the inevitable meeting. Finally, after lunch, she couldn't put it off any longer. She took the elevator to the top floor, her heart pounding with each floor the numbers climbed. Landon's office was at the end of the executive corridor, with glass walls offering a stunning view of the Chicago skyline. The door was open, but Ayana knocked anyway. He looked up from his computer, and his face transformed with a smile that reached his eyes, the same smile she'd grown to look forward to each morning when he was just Landon the janitor. "Ayana," he said, standing. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." She took a seat across from his desk, noting that while the office was certainly luxurious, it wasn't ostentatious. Like the man himself, it was more substantial than showy. "You've been busy," she said, gesturing to the memo she'd placed on his desk. "Reorganizing the company in 2 days." "It was overdue," he said simply. "I should have been more hands-on from the beginning, not let the culture deteriorate to this point." "Better late than never," she offered. He looked at her with cautious hope. "Does that apply to apologies too?" "Maybe," she said, not ready to give him an easy out. "Emma told me about the community outreach division." "Ah," he leaned back in his chair. "What do you think?" "I think it sounds exactly like what I described to you last week." "It is," he admitted. "You had a vision for something this company, this community needs. I'm just providing the resources to make it happen." "Is this your way of trying to win me over?" she asked directly. Landon shook his head. "No, it's my way of doing the right thing. Whether you ever speak to me again or not, that program deserves to exist." His sincerity was disarming. This was the Landon she'd connected with. Straightforward, thoughtful, genuinely interested in making a difference. "I'd like you to run it," he continued. "The entire division. You have the passion, the understanding, and the skills." But I'll understand if you'd rather not work closely with me. Ayana was stunned. You want me to head up an entire division? I don't even have a degree. You have something more valuable. Lived experience and heart. The degree can come later if you want it. We'll provide tuition assistance. He leaned forward. This isn't charity, Ayana. It's recognition of your talent. The offer was tempting, a chance to create the very program she'd dreamed about, to help people like herself who just needed a chance and some guidance. I'll think about it, she said carefully. That's all I ask. Landon hesitated, then added, and if it helps you decide, the position would report to the board, not directly to me. I want there to be no question that this is about your abilities, not about us. The word hung in the air between them, a possibility, a question mark. Is there still an us to consider? Ayana asked quietly. Landon's expression was a mixture of hope and resignation. That's entirely up to you. I meant what I said at the park. I'll wait, for as long as it takes. But I won't pressure you. She nodded, appreciating his respect for her boundaries. I should get back to work. Of course. He stood as she did. Thank you for coming up. At the door, she paused. The janitor I met was kind, thoughtful, and genuine. Was any of that real? All of it, Landon said without hesitation. The title and the bank account are just details, Ayana. The man who brought you coffee, who helped you move, who listened to your dreams, that's the real me. The only thing that changed is now you know my last name comes with some baggage. She studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she nodded once and left, her mind swirling with conflicted emotions. That evening, as Ayana walked home, her phone buzzed with a text from Zora. Don't freak out, but I applied for that internship program at Pinnacle, the one in the email you forwarded me. Ayana stopped in her tracks. She had forwarded Zora the announcement about student internships in the new community division, but she hadn't expected her sister to apply so quickly. Did you say who your sister is? Ayana texted back. No, I used Mom's maiden name. I want to get in on my own merits, not because of whatever is going on with you and the boss man. Ayana smiled despite herself. Zora was growing up, showing the same independence and integrity that had always guided Ayana's own choices. As she continued walking, another text came through, this one from Landon. No pressure, but there's a proposal meeting for the community division tomorrow at 2. Your input would be valuable, whether you decide to lead it or not. Only if you're comfortable. She stared at the message, weighing her options. The professional opportunity was incredible, a chance to create something meaningful, to help people like herself and Zora. But could she work with Landon, seeing him every day, knowing what might have been between them? More importantly, could she forgive the deception that had started it all? As she approached their apartment building, Ayana noticed a familiar truck parked across the street. Landon was sitting on the hood, not in a suit this time, but in the same coveralls he'd worn when she first met him. Her heart did a traitorous flip in her chest. "What are you doing here?" she asked as she approached. He held up a toolbox. "Your sister texted me, said the shower is leaking again." She what? Ayana was going to have a serious talk with Zora about boundaries. I can leave, Landon offered. If you'd rather I didn't come in. Ayana hesitated. Having him in her home again after everything that had happened felt too intimate. But there was something in his expression, an earnestness, a humility that the powerful CEO shouldn't possess, that weakened her resolve. Just the shower, she said firmly. Nothing else. He nodded, following her up the stairs at a respectful distance. Inside, Zora was all innocent smiles. Oh, you're here. Great. The shower's dripping again. I'll be in my room, studying. She disappeared before Ayana could confront her about the obvious setup. Landon chuckled softly. She's not subtle, is she? Not even a little, Ayana agreed, finding herself smiling despite her best intentions. They stood awkwardly in the small living room, the weight of unspoken words between them. I can just fix the shower and go, Landon offered again. Ayana studied him, this man who could buy and sell their entire building without blinking, standing in her modest apartment in janitor's coveralls, toolbox in hand. Why are you really here, Landon? She asked softly. Because I miss you, he said simply. The morning coffee, the conversations, just you. The honesty in his voice broke something open inside her. I miss you too, she admitted, but I'm still angry and hurt. You have every right to be, and confused. About what was real and what wasn't. Landon set down his toolbox. Ask me anything. Right here, right now. Complete honesty. Ayana took a deep breath. When you helped me move, when you fixed our shower, when you sent the flowers, was that the CEO trying to impress an employee, or was it just you? Just me, he said without hesitation. The CEO would have sent a moving company and a professional plumber. The CEO would have ordered roses from the most expensive florist in Chicago. Just the man wanted to help you himself, wanted to find wildflowers because you once mentioned liking them as a child. His words rang true, echoing the feeling she'd had all along, that the connection between them transcended their different worlds. I believe you, she said finally, but I don't know if it's enough. Landon nodded, accepting her uncertainty. I understand, but I meant what I said at the park. I'll wait. He picked up his toolbox again. Now, about that shower. Ayana watched him walk toward the bathroom, his shoulders carrying none of the arrogance one might expect from a successful CEO. Instead, he moved with the same quiet confidence she'd noticed that first morning in the lobby. And in that moment, she realized something important. The man she'd been falling for wasn't the janitor or the CEO. He was just Landon, complicated, imperfect, but genuine in the ways that truly mattered. The question now was whether that realization was enough to build something new on the ruins of what his deception had destroyed. A week passed, then two. Ayana attended the community outreach planning meetings, offering insights and suggestions while maintaining a professional distance from Landon. He kept his word, never pressuring her, treating her with respect, but giving her space. The office atmosphere had transformed. Gone was the rigid hierarchy that had defined Pinnacle Tech. In its place was a more collaborative environment where ideas were valued regardless of who suggested them. "It's like working at a completely different company," Bradley Pierce's assistant remarked to Ayana one morning. "He actually said, 'please,' yesterday when he asked for coffee." Ayana smiled. Amazing what happens when people are held accountable. She couldn't deny that Landon's changes were making a real difference. He had taken what he learned during his undercover weeks and implemented meaningful reforms. The maintenance staff now had a voice in company meetings. Executives were required to spend time learning about all departments. Even the break room had been renovated to be more welcoming for everyone. Each change reminded Ayana of conversations they'd had during those early mornings, observations she'd made, suggestions she'd offered casually. He had been listening, really listening. On a rainy Tuesday, Ayana found a note on her desk when she arrived. "Meeting in conference room B at 9 Su. Final approval for community outreach leadership position. Your input needed." Emma Ayana's stomach tightened. She had been helping design the program, but had yet to give Landon a final answer about leading it. The opportunity was incredible, a chance to create exactly what she'd dreamed of, with real resources behind it. But accepting meant tying her future to Pinnacle Tech, to Landon. At Nutty Su'a, she entered conference room B to find Landon and Emma waiting with a stack of folders. "Thanks for coming," Landon said, his smile genuine but careful. "We're finalizing the leadership structure for the outreach division, and I wanted to make sure you approved before we move forward." "I thought you wanted me to lead it," Ayana said, confused by his wording. "I do," he confirmed, "but you haven't given me an answer yet, and we need to launch the program next month." "So I've drafted 2 plans." He handed her the top folder. "This one has you as executive director reporting to the board." The organizational chart inside showed her name at the top of the division, with a team of educators, advisors, and administrative staff beneath her. The salary listed made her breath catch, nearly triple what she was making now. "And this one?" she asked, pointing to the second folder. "That's if you decide not to take the position." "We'd still want you involved as a program consultant, but we'd bring in someone else to lead day-to-day operations." The care he'd taken to give her options, to respect her autonomy, touched something deep inside her. "Which would you prefer?" she asked, watching his face. "I think you know the answer to that," Landon said quietly. "You're perfect for this role, Ayana. This was your vision from the start." Emma cleared her throat. "I'll let you two discuss this privately." She slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her. Alone with Landon, Ayana felt the familiar mix of attraction and uncertainty that had been her constant companion these past weeks. "Why haven't you pressured me?" she asked suddenly. "About the job, or anything else?" Landon looked surprised by the question. "Because I respect you too much. Your decisions should be your own, not something I manipulate or force. That's not how most powerful men operate. I'm not most men." He smiled slightly. "At least I hope not." Ayana studied the folders again, tracing her name on the executive director chart. "This is really happening, isn't it? Not just talk, not just plans, but actual change." "It is," Landon confirmed. The board approved the full budget yesterday. We start hiring next week. She took a deep breath. I want the job. His face lit up. Really? Yes, but I have conditions. Name them. Complete autonomy over program decisions. I report to the board, not to you, just like you suggested. And she hesitated, then plunged ahead. What happens between us personally stays separate from work. No special treatment, no office gossip. Agreed, on all counts, Landon said immediately. Anything else? Ayana met his eyes directly. Yes, Zora applied for the student internship program. She used our mother's maiden name because she wants to earn it on her own merits. I want your word that you won't interfere, either to help or hurt her chances. Landon nodded solemnly. I won't look at the applications at all. The education team will handle the selection process without my input. Thank you. She stood, offering her hand formally. Then you have your executive director, Mr. Shaw. He shook her hand, his touch lingering slightly longer than necessary. Welcome to the leadership team, Ms. Cole. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Ayana transitioned from reception to her new role, working long hours to get the program ready for its official launch. She hired staff, secured a separate office space in a neighborhood that needed the resources, and developed a curriculum for the first workshops. She saw Landon almost daily in meetings, but their interactions remained strictly professional. If others noticed the careful distance between them, no one commented on it. At home, Zora was buzzing with excitement about her internship interview. They said they were impressed with my application, she told Ayana as they ate dinner in their small kitchen. The interview is next Tuesday after school. That's wonderful, Ayana said sincerely. Have you thought about what you'll wear? Zora's face fell. My nice pants have a stain I can't get out, and my only blouse is too small now. Ayana mentally calculated their budget. Zora's school expenses had eaten up most of their extra funds this month, even with Ayana's new salary. We'll figure something out, she promised. Maybe we can borrow something from Mrs. Peterson next door. Later that night, as Ayana worked on program budgets at their kitchen table, her phone buzzed with a text from Landon. How's the program coming along? Anything you need? It was the first personal message he'd sent since she accepted the job. She hesitated, then replied, coming together well. Staff is nearly complete. Space is perfect. His response came quickly. I knew you'd be amazing at this. The board is impressed with your progress reports. A warm feeling spread through her chest at his praise. After a moment's hesitation, she added, Zora has her internship interview next week. She's nervous but excited. She should be excited. The education team said the competition is fierce this year. Ayana smiled, appreciating that he was honoring his promise not to interfere with Zora's application. She needs interview clothes, but we're tight this month, planning to borrow something. As soon as she sent it, Ayana regretted the message. It sounded like she was asking for help, which was exactly what she'd been avoiding. Landon's reply came after a long pause. There's a professional clothing drive happening in the office tomorrow. All employees can take what they need, no questions asked. Part of the new company initiatives. Maybe you could find something for her there. Ayana stared at the message, suspicion warring with gratitude. Was there really a clothing drive, or was this Landon's way of helping without making it personal? The next morning, she discovered that there was indeed a professional clothing drive in the main conference room. Racks of donated suits, dresses, and accessories filled the space, with a sign encouraging employees to take what they needed. Emma found her examining a navy blazer that would fit Zora perfectly. Landon organized this last week, Emma explained. It was supposed to be next month, but he pushed to move it up. Something about timing being important. Ayana raised an eyebrow. Did he now? Emma grinned. He's trying, Ayana, in his own way. I know, Ayana admitted softly. She selected the blazer, a matching skirt, and a simple white blouse for Zora. As she was leaving, she noticed Landon watching from across the hall. He gave her a small nod but didn't approach. That evening, when Zora tried on the outfit, her excitement was palpable. I look professional, she exclaimed, twirling in front of their small bathroom mirror. Like I already work there. You look beautiful, Ayana agreed, her heart full. And you're going to nail that interview. Zora stopped twirling, her expression turning serious. Have you talked to him, Landon? At work, yes. We have meetings almost every day. You know what I mean. About you two, Ayana sighed. There is no us two, Zora. He's my boss. He's the company owner, not your direct boss. You said so yourself. Zora sat beside her sister on the bed. And you still have feelings for him. I can tell. It's complicated. Life is complicated, Zora said with teenage wisdom. Doesn't mean you give up on the good parts. The grand opening of the Pinnacle Community Business Center was scheduled for a Friday evening in early October. Ayana had worked tirelessly to make it perfect, a welcoming space with classrooms, computer labs, and meeting areas where people could learn business skills, get resume help, and access resources they couldn't afford on their own. The press was there, local politicians, and the entire Pinnacle Tech executive team. Ayana wore a simple but elegant black dress, her hair styled in a professional updo. Landon arrived just before the ceremony began. He looked handsome in a charcoal suit, his presence commanding without being intimidating. Their eyes met across the room, and he gave her a warm smile that she couldn't help returning. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma announced, please welcome the Executive Director of Pinnacle Community Outreach, Ms. Ayana Cole. Applause filled the room as Ayana took the podium. She looked out at the crowd, colleagues, community members, reporters, and felt a surge of pride. Thank you all for coming, she began. This center represents something I've dreamed about for years, a place where talent and ambition can meet opportunity, where people who might never get a foot in the door can find not just an opening, but a welcome. As she spoke about the program's mission, her eyes found Landon's in the audience. He was watching her with unmistakable admiration. None of this would be possible without the vision and support of Pinnacle Tech and its CEO, Landon Shaw, she continued. He understood that business success is meaningless if it doesn't lift up the community around it. After her speech, as people mingled and toured the facility, Landon approached her. That was inspiring, he said sincerely. You've created something remarkable here, Ayana. We did, she corrected him. This wouldn't exist without your support. It wouldn't exist without your heart, he countered. I just provided the funding. You provided the vision. Before she could respond, a reporter approached asking for a photo of the two of them together. Ayana tensed slightly, but Landon handled it smoothly, standing beside her with a professional distance that gave no hint of their complicated history. Later, as the event wound down, Ayana found herself alone in her new office, taking a moment of quiet to absorb everything that had happened. There was a soft knock at the door. "May I come in?" Landon asked. She nodded, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I have something for you," he said, placing a small wrapped box on the desk. "Landon, you didn't need to—" "It's not from the CEO to his executive director," he interrupted gently. "It's from me to you, just me." With hesitant fingers, Ayana unwrapped the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small fountain. "To remember where we almost began," Landon said softly. "And where I hope we might begin again someday." Ayana touched the charm, her throat tight with emotion. "It's beautiful. Like its wearer," he said simply. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Ayana allowed herself to remember the connection they'd shared before the truth came out. The easy conversations, the laughter, the growing affection. The moment was broken by Emma calling Landon's name from the hallway. He stood reluctantly. "Duty calls," he said with a rueful smile. "Congratulations again, Ayana. What you've built here is going to change lives." After he left, Ayana slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, watching how it caught the light. Despite her best efforts to maintain emotional distance, Landon Shaw was working his way back into her heart. The following Tuesday, Zora burst through their apartment door, waving a letter. "I got it! I got the internship!" she shouted, dancing around the small living room. "That's amazing!" Ayana hugged her sister tight. "I knew you could do it." "The interview panel said my application was one of the strongest they'd seen," Zora said proudly. "And they had no idea I was your sister until after they'd already decided. I told them at the end of the interview." "What did they say?" "They laughed and said talent runs in the family." Zora flopped onto the couch. "I start next week, 2 afternoons a week after school, and they're going to help me with college applications too." Ayana's heart swelled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Zora. Mom and Dad would be too." Later that night, she texted Landon, "Zora got the internship, on her own merits, just like she wanted. Thank you for keeping your word." His reply came a few minutes later. "I never doubted she would." Congratulations to her. The Cole women are a force to be reckoned with. Ayana smiled at her phone, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with professional accomplishment. As October turned to November, the Community Business Center flourished. Enrollment in classes exceeded projections, and success stories were already emerging. People finding jobs, starting small businesses, gaining confidence. Ayana threw herself into the work, finding deep satisfaction in watching her vision become reality. She saw Landon regularly at board meetings and events, maintaining their professional relationship while trying to ignore the lingering attraction between them. One evening, as she was leaving the center after a late night, she found Landon waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his truck. "Need a ride?" he asked. "It's starting to snow." Sure enough, the first flakes of the season were drifting down from the dark sky. "I was going to call a rideshare," Ayana said, but the cold wind made her shiver. "My truck has heat," Landon offered with a smile, "and I promise to drive straight to your apartment. No detours." She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." The drive was quiet at first, a comfortable silence between them. Landon didn't push for conversation, and Ayana appreciated his patience. "The program is doing well," she finally said. "We're already looking at expanding to weekend classes." "I've heard nothing but praise from the board," Landon agreed. "You've exceeded everyone's expectations." "Even yours?" He glanced at her, his eyes warm in the dim light. "I never had any doubts about what you could accomplish, Ayana." Not from the first day we talked. As they approached her building, Ayana found herself reluctant for the drive to end. There was something comforting about being with Landon again, away from the office and all its complications. "Thank you for the ride," she said as he pulled up to her building. "Anytime," he replied, his voice soft. "I mean that." Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, Ayana thought he might lean across the seat and kiss her. Instead, he simply smiled and said, "Good night, Ayana." "Good night, Landon." As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Ayana realized something important. She was ready to forgive him. More than that, she missed him. Not the CEO, not even the janitor, but the man who existed behind both those roles. The man who brought her coffee, who listened to her dreams, who saw her value when others didn't. The man she was falling in love with. Two weeks later, Ayana returned home from a particularly long day to find a package leaning against her apartment door. There was no shipping label, no note, just a plain brown box tied with simple twine. Curious, she carried it inside. Zora was at her internship and wouldn't be home for another hour. Ayana opened the box carefully. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was an artist's set. Professional quality paints, brushes, and sketchbooks. "What on earth?" she whispered, running her fingers over the supplies. During one of their early morning conversations, she had mentioned to Landon that she used to love painting as a teenager, that before their parents' accident, before she had to grow up overnight and take care of Zora, she had dreamed of studying art. "I never have time now," she had told him, "and good supplies are expensive. Maybe someday." She had forgotten the conversation entirely, but Landon hadn't. Examining the brushes, she noticed that one handle was different from the others. It was engraved with small, elegant lettering, "To the one who saw me first." Tears filled Ayana's eyes. The message was clear. She had seen beyond the janitor's coveralls, beyond the CEO's suit, to the man himself. Just as he had seen her, not just as a receptionist, but as a woman with dreams and strength and heart. She was still sitting there, holding the engraved brush, when a knock came at the door. Somehow she knew who it would be. Landon stood in the hallway, no suit, no coveralls, just jeans and a simple sweater. His expression was a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I should have asked first before sending the gift," he said. "I didn't want to presume—" "It's perfect," Ayana interrupted. her voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe you remembered." "I remember everything about our conversations," he said simply. "They were the most honest ones I'd had in years." The silence between them was charged with possibility. Ayana felt her heart pounding, knowing they were at a crossroads. "I don't want a second chance with the company," Landon said softly, echoing the words from her first day as executive director. "I want a first chance with you. The real me, no titles, no pretenses." Ayana felt tears slipping down her cheeks. "How do I know which version of you is real?" "They all are," he admitted. The ambitious CEO, the quiet janitor, they're both parts of who I am. But the man who stands before you now, the one who's terrified you'll send him away, that's the most real of all. She stepped toward him, close enough to see the vulnerability in his eyes, the slight tremble in his hands. "I've missed you," she whispered. "Not the CEO, not the janitor, just you." Landon's face softened with hope. "Does that mean—" "It means I'm willing to try," Ayana said. "But on one condition." "Anything." Her lips curved into a teasing smile. "You have to mop my kitchen floor first." Landon's laughter filled the hallway, relief and joy breaking through the tension. "I happen to be very good at mopping." "I know," Ayana said, reaching for his hand. "That's how we met, remember?" As their fingers intertwined, Ayana felt the last of her doubts melting away. The path forward wouldn't be simple. Nothing worth having ever was. But as Landon's hand tightened around hers, she knew they would find their way together. Not as boss and employee, not as rich and poor, just as two people who had seen past the surface to find something real. Two people who had found love where they least expected it, on an ordinary Monday morning, with a man in coveralls and a woman who cared enough to learn his name. The end.